Mom, Dad, there's no way that I can express to you what I'm feeling right now. My heart is full to bursting, except to say, I'm the king of the world!
Hello and welcome back to Cameron, King of the World. On May 30th, 1995, Universal Studios Florida announced that an upcoming attraction in the following year would be unveiled and would open, entitled Terminator II 3D Battle Across Time, and it would be directed by James Cameron. Now, this was an interesting, almost oddity in Cameron's filmography that I thought would be interesting to cover in this series, because it isn't a film. It's a theme park attraction, but it was shot kind of as a film. There's like a 12-minute movie in there, like a little short film. And then that is kind of blended with the overall attraction and kind of ride. So this is not really a ride, but you go in, and it's similar. The only thing I can kind of compare it to personally from personal experience is when I went to Disneyland Paris in 1999, and I went to see the attraction Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, which is like a mini sequel to the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movies, but you kind of sit in the cinema and you get the 3D movie and stuff, and it was a lot of fun and kind of scary when I was a kid and stuff, but you know, that's the only thing I can kind of compare it to. It's less of a ride, more of an experience and an attraction. Initially, Cameron was kind of reticent about coming on board with this, you know, as far as his franchise of the Terminator films and the Terminator stories being made into this attraction. He wasn't sure about it, but they showed him some concept, and he kind of liked the idea. And I think also he wanted to experiment with 3D cameras and stuff and fully immersive 3D sound, like a really state-of-the-art kind of experience for fans. And so he came on board, and they I'm not sure when they filmed it. I'm assuming it'd be in 1995, at the very latest, early 1996. Because they announced it in May of 1995, and the actual attraction opened on April 27th of 1996 at Universal Studios Florida, and it later opened at Universal Studios Hollywood and then Universal Studios Japan. So it had this kind of multiple outreach in various parts of the world. But, you know, once the filming had been completed, they also have live kind of actors on the stage who are playing the parts of the characters from the movie, but they actually brought the original cast of Terminator 2 back for the movie 3D experience part of the whole attraction. So we have Arnold Schwarzenegger back, we have Edward Furlong back as John Connor, Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, and then Robert Patrick as the T-1000. I first heard about this when I got the DVD set of Terminator 1 and 2, and it was like a special edition set with all these extras, and it was like Terminator 2 3D. I was like, huh. So I put this thing on. It's like a 20-minute making-of featurette of the shooting of the 3D movie. And I was just like, wow, it's Edward Furlong playing John Connor again. How did I never know about this? And at that point in time, when I got the DVD set, Terminator 3 hadn't happened yet. It might have been like they were talking about that they were making it at the time, but for me, Terminator 3 didn't exist. So this is like the closest to it I could see, but you can't actually watch the movie itself. So there's like a 12-minute run of kind of film, essentially, and they actually filmed it on 70mm film with these huge bulky 3D cameras. And again, Cameron was kind of really excited about experimenting with them, and I think maybe what gave him the push to actually get involved in directing this was the fact that it's like a 12-minute piece. It's not a whole movie. It's not going to take him years of his life to make it. And it was a huge production, and the budget was very extravagant. Apparently overall it all told cost about $60 million, and the actual filming of the 3D movie cost $24 million. So that's like $2 million per minute. So that's like $2 million per minute, and is one of the most expensive movies ever made in terms of a budget by minute breakdown and ratio. And they filmed it in Eagle Mountain in the Californian desert, and this huge dystopian kind of future war set. Now, there's no way to watch this, which is kind of frustrating. I wish that especially because they have it in 70mm, like they could really do something cool with scanning it in, make it look really nice, and then putting it on a Blu-ray high definition on the extras of Terminator 2. Perfect way to do it, but They haven't done that. And I understand because it's not the full experience. The full experience is going into the Cyberdyne building at Universal Studios and kind of, getting to see all the promo videos, the Cyberdyne kind of promotional adverts and commercials they have on screen. And that gets interrupted by John Connor and Sarah Connor saying, you need to get out of this building and stuff. And they're making it fun for the audience. You got to wear the safety visors, which are the 3D glasses. And then they usher you into this kind of waiting room where the director of operations of Cyberdyne comes in and talks to the audience and stuff. And I think that room is called the Miles Bennett Dyson Memorial Auditorium. So they're kind of linking it into the movies, obviously with Cyberdyne and everything. And then you get to the main kind of screening room, and a woman comes out and she actually kind of shows off these T-70s, which are like the first Terminator models that have a vaguely humanoid shape. These 8-foot tall, and they kind of bring down I don't know what you call them. Damn, it's like a really simple thing, but like the pieces of paper that you fire at on a shooting range, like just the targets, yeah, the human targets with like the outline of the human. Those come down, and the Terminators fire off the machine guns in the room. You like the physical like Terminator kind of models and stuff and animatronics. Really cool stuff. And then the characters from the movie turn up on the stage. There's this big elaborate stage, and they kind of run in and stuff. And what I found really interesting is that, and I should say how I viewed this. So now I'm thinking, okay, the only thing I can do here is review the behind the scenes documentary and just talk about, this as a thing, not so much reviewing it because I can't see it, and the ride, the attraction has since been discontinued. So I looked on YouTube, and this is why I love the internet. The internet has some really bad shit on it, and it has some really good shit on it, and some of the good shit is on YouTube, and some people have uploaded kind of camera views of going inside the building. In fact, the final performance, which was done on October 8th, 2017, that was the final, showing and performance of the Terminator 2 3D. Someone filmed that in terms of walking into the building, going into the waiting line, the holding room, into the main auditorium, and the main part of the ride. Now, it's really, really cool that someone like commemorated that final performance by filming it, so you can watch it through that kind of perspective, even though it doesn't give you the full experience and you're not seeing the 3D, so that the image on the screen is slightly blurred and has that kind of ghosting effect because you're not looking at it through 3D glasses. But there are a few people who have uploaded like the actual film portion, like the 12 minutes of just the movie with kind of the future war scenario, but it's in really ropey kind of standard definition VHS kind of quality, so it's not the best. But someone also, because one thing I noticed on that recording of the last performance is the promotional videos in Cyberdyne look very modern. And I thought, well, these wouldn't have been around in the 90s because this looks far too modern. So I did find out that in 2015 they changed and updated the Cyberdyne commercials and promos that you see as you go into the ride. And in the 90s they had a different set of them. And I found a version of that where someone had taken various elements of filming inside the room and everything, and then the Cyberdyne commercials and promo videos that were filmed and made at the time in 1996. So you can kind of get an idea of every kind of portion and part of the ride through just watching YouTube videos. And there was one version I watched where the 3D effect was not really there on the screen, so I could watch it in a lot more detail, even though it's essentially a camera pointed at a big screen. It's a lot better quality than the kind of, what would you call it, just the file of the film itself, which is on YouTube in really bad quality. So I just watched like the full run through of the whole ride from this person who'd kind of done an amalgam cut of various different sources, which kind of presents the best possible way to see the whole film and experience as a viewer at home on your computer. So that I enjoyed that at least existed, and I kind of hoped that there would be an official version of that just to capture it, because with rides and attractions, they don't last forever. There was a Back to the Future ride, and Universal put the films of that on the Blu-ray set of Back to the Future, because you had Christopher Lloyd coming back as Doc Brown, and so that was like a kind of extension of the movies, and they kind of captured that, preserved it, and put it on the Blu-ray extras. So I think they should have done that for Terminator 2. But it is what it is, and at least some people out there had the sense to preserve it, and you can kind of get a rough idea of what it would be like. So the story follows, they come onto the big stage. It's John Connor and Sarah Connor, but they have actors on the stage who obviously aren't the real actors, but on the big screen you get like a close-up and camera angle view of what they're doing, and so the actors are kind of matching the movements of the stuff on the screen, and the close-ups on the screen are of Linda Hamilton and Edward Furlong. And then the T-1000 comes in, and his head comes in, and the chrome and stuff, start searching for John Connor, and then a portal opens up and Arnold comes in on the bike, and the bike literally comes onto the stage. John Connor gets on the back, and then they ride back, literally back to the future, and they go out into the future war setting of this post-apocalyptic world. And then we go into the movie where it's the Terminator, the T-800 Arnold on the bike with John Connor on the back, and the T-1000 follows them. He's got the kind of knife arms and everything. He's wearing the same kind of police helmet outfit from near the end of Terminator 2. He's chasing them, and he's got the shotgun. Arnold's got the shotgun that he spins around on his hand and everything. And then they get into like fighting like more of the actual Terminators in this future war setting, including the T-1000, this big like spider kind of massive. It's like this big kind of spider monster, but it's all the liquid metal, the mimetic polyalloy. So that was a bit like, I mean, for the purposes of the attraction and the ride, fair enough, I understand. But as far as an actual like canon sequel to Terminator 2, I think some of it is a bit outlandish, which, you know, I know that it's the Terminator, it's a fairly outlandish concept to begin with, but you know, and actually, you know, continuity wise, one thing that doesn't quite sit right with me, and you know, and I do just view this as its separate entity. It's just kind of like a multiverse story, like it's not really connected to the movies. But in the behind the scenes, Cameron says that this is not just a ride and an attraction, this is a jumping off point for the third movie. And so I actually did a little bit of digging into what Cameron was originally going to do with the Terminator 3. Didn't find much in terms of plot or anything, but it was interesting that he considered this to be like the bridge point between Terminator 2 and Terminator 3. And I really didn't think that he had planned that much beyond, yeah, maybe I'll do a third one. But apparently he had ideas, and you know, this was kind of part of that. And I don't think it quite fits, because Arnold comes out of the future, takes John Connor back, and he's already got the motorbike. Like, where did he get the Harley from in the future? He's got the leather jacket, the shades, and the relationship between him and John is just like it is in Terminator 2, and it's not the same guy, the same machine. So, I mean, it's permissible that another Terminator came back at the exact same time in Terminator 2, and so there was one more chip, and then, you know, Cyberdyne and Skynet happened, you know, regardless either way, which is kind of what they do in the future movies and Terminator Dark Fate. And I like the idea that no matter what, this shit is going to go down, because humans are going to destroy each other, and they're going to continue developing artificial intelligence and all that stuff. So I don't mind the fact that the kind of doomed future still happens, but, you know, it is tricky, because then things change because of what they changed in Terminator 2. But let's just say, for argument's sake, it'd be permissible that they sent another T-800 back, you know, around the same time with Terminator 2. He catches up with John Connor and Sarah Connor after the end of Terminator 2, and then they go through the same bonding relationship, they go through the same stuff all over again, and then he goes to the future, and then comes back to save John from the T-1000. Like, it's barely permissible that the relationship would have been reformed in a different machine, and then, you know, he begins to, you know, learn what it is to you know, the human emotions and stuff. Even if he doesn't really feel them, he understands them. All the same stuff theoretically he would be able to learn in the same way that the T-800 in Terminator 2 had learned them in the movie. And then he goes off on the motorbike into the future to find out what happens. Then he comes back, saves John from the T-1000, comes back again, but then the T-1000 has to go through the same process of projecting itself with the helmet of the police officer. It just doesn't work, because everything then repeats itself for the convenience of this part of the story. And really, the only reason that Arnold shows up with the leather jacket, with the shades, on the bike, and has the same relationship with John Connor, and Robert Patrick is playing the T-1000 with the same police helmet from Terminator 2, is because it's familiar iconography and relationships that the audience understand from the movie. That's all it is. There's no like in-universe, in-canon way of explaining it, but that was like my vague attempt to kind of make it permissible. But, you know, for me, it doesn't feel like a canon sequel or, you know, continuation of Terminator 2, because it just doesn't feel right. It's cool to see, you know, Edward Furlong as a slightly older teenage John Connor, and it's fun to see the relationship back again. But, you know, when Arnold in Terminator 2 3D is kind of cracking jokes like, let's bust a move. Like, you know, it's just repeating what had been done in Terminator 2, and it betrays the fact that that character died at the end of Terminator 2. You know what I mean? So it's just fun for me as a kind of alternate multiverse standalone story. But Cameron very much viewed it as a jumping off point for the third movie. But where he would have gone with that, I just don't know. So in 1995, I'm assuming that he had made this and filmed the kind of the movie section in 1995, and he was heavily involved in like the whole production and the timing of everything on the stage, which is very cool. And I should mention before I get to the wrapping up here, how the movie ends is they're kind of riding on the motorbike, and it's a really cool action sequence and stuff, and these mini hunter killers, these CGI things which swing in and out in a very kind of, throwing it in your face for the 3D audience and stuff. And they kind of destroy those. There's a cool action scene with John and the Terminator. It's just fun to see John Connor and the Terminator off in a little mini adventure. It's really enjoyable from that aspect, and especially the fact that it's Arnold Schwarzenegger and Edward Furlong. And then they go to Skynet, and it's like a very Blade Runner-y kind of pyramid and stuff, and they go inside, and then they go down this big elevator, and that's when you're kind of seeing the elevator on three separate, or the elevator and the background are kind of projected on all three of the massive screens inside the auditorium. So it's a really cool thing. But once the T-1000 comes up and it's all like the big spider metal thing, it's a bit outlandish and kind of, hokey and, a bit like a sideshow, like an attraction, like it's like a theme park ride. So, and that's exactly what it is. That's what I'm saying. Like it's difficult because I look at it and I almost want Terminator 2 3D Battle Across Time to be like a movie, because it's the only way I can receive it and enjoy it is watching it on this screen. But it really was built for an attraction, and so you can't really judge it on the same merits as a proper film, I don't think. So it's kind of its own entity, its own experience, its own project. And they save the day and then blow up the Terminator, and that's it. So it's a fun little, very expensive. It was like very expensive to make, and it was a very successful one. It was very well received. People loved the show. It was really exciting, really fun, action packed. The fact you had the name value of those actors coming back, especially Arnold Schwarzenegger, it really just became a perfect companion piece to the film as a ride, as an attraction at Universal Studios. As I said, in October 8th of 2017, they discontinued it, and I think a Bourne Legacy, Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum, whatever you want to call it, Jason Bourne ride took over its place. So it had a good 21-year run from 1996 to 2017, and I guess that's it. There's only so long something like that can run. Is it possible it could come back? I guess. But, it was a very successful, ride and attraction. So I feel wrong to say ride, because to me it feels more like an interactive movie. Well, it's not even interactive, but like a special event attraction movie as opposed to a ride. I don't know if you can technically call it a ride or not, but either way. So Terminator 3, I just really interested. The last thing to kind of round this off, I was really intrigued about how Cameron said in the behind the scenes that this is a jumping off point for a third movie. So I looked into it, and apparently, he was diving the Titanic in 1995, and at that point in time, the company who had financed and kind of bought the rights to the original sequel, Carolco, who kind of made Terminator 2 happen, they went bankrupt in 1995. So Cameron decided to make Terminator 3 with 20th Century Fox, and they were willing to buy the rights off Carolco to make the complete wholesale rights for the Terminator franchise and the sequel rights, which would cost about $50 million. But then another company bid, and it went up to $58 million, and Fox weren't sure, and at that point in time, Cameron was making Titanic, and things were just a little bit more, there were just different shifting priorities at that point in time. And in January of 1996, Fox decided to withdraw their bid on the Terminator kind of rights, and decided not to move ahead with the project, and Cameron was doing Titanic. But then in 1997, there were 9 months of negotiating between Cameron and his ex-wife, Gaylan Hurd, who had a stake in the rights and everything, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger was heavily involved. He wanted to do another Terminator film. Even Carolco, when Terminator 2 came out, they said they were going to make one in the next 5 to 7 years. Cameron said around the time of Terminator 2, if this film is financially successful, there'll probably be some financial, pressure to make a sequel, and he wasn't sure about it. But, he became more open to it as time went on, and was up for making it. But as he was making Titanic and in post-production, he realized that I don't think I have much more story to tell. Like, it wrapped up so nicely. I just don't think, for me, it's worth the time. And he also said that it felt like laboring in someone else's house, because he had sold the rights initially when he made the first Terminator films. Here he was, like, some 15 years later. And it's like, all these rights are being squabbled over, and there's money, like $50 million on the table. And Arnold's salary was going to be $25 million, and that was kind of a nervous thing for Fox. Like, they're thinking, okay, we can spend $50 million on the rights to the Terminator, but then we got to spend 25 on Arnold, and then we've got to spend like another 80-90 million to make the third, the next sequel. And so they just got cold feet about it, and especially considering how Titanic was going over budget and over schedule, they were very nervous about it. And I mentioned the deal that Cameron had with 20th Century Fox, and so there was a lot of deals, a lot of money on the table, a lot of conflicting, viewpoints on how a third movie would go and how it would be made and financed, and who would have the rights and all this kind of stuff. I think for Cameron it became a bit of a headache, and also he realized that, do I really need to make a third movie? And he ultimately decided that he didn't. And once he kind of withdrew from the project, Arnold kind of also said, like, I'm not going to make it unless Cameron's there. But Cameron kind of pushed Arnold, said, no, look, just go make it. Make sure they pay you a shit ton of money and just make the third movie. Make sure it's a good script. And, just make sure, they don't take advantage. He was being supportive as a friend and everything, but Arnold was another, he was one of the driving forces behind the second movie getting made, as I mentioned in the previous video. So it was one of those things where it really needed to be Arnold and Cameron in his mind, but Cameron ultimately said no, just go ahead and do it, and that's given him the license to go off and make many more Terminator sequels. And then Cameron finally came back in 2019 and 2018 and 19. Oh, I think it's 2017, 18, and 19 to do Terminator Dark Fate, which we will talk about in a future video. The topic of the true Terminator 3 will be touched on in a future video. But I found that interesting that Cameron was actually really considering it, because there's so many unrealized Cameron projects from the 90s, and in particular, there was, Avatar, which we'll talk about very soon, and that was kind of in development in the 90s, and then there was his Spider-Man movie was kind of in talk around this time too, and then he was making Titanic, and all this stuff was snowballing. No Titanic 2 on the table, funnily enough, in the late 90s, but he'd done that film, and it kind of changed the kind of course of his career. And so by late 1997, early 1998, he had completely gone from the project of Terminator 3 and kind of just let that slide. And that eventually was made in 2003. And maybe the less said about that, the better. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on that film. I think I'll talk about it in the Dark Fate video, so you can look forward to that. Otherwise, that was Terminator 2 3D. I always loved the bit. It's a really memorable moment for me in the behind-the-scenes featurette on Terminator 2 3D is Arnold very excitedly on the set. He's like, we're back here again with the Terminator. And he's like, now it's T2 3D. And I'm doing this because he's got like a fucking cigar in his hand the entire time, like the whole documentary. Anyway, that's it for now. I enjoyed kind of getting a chance to see some of it, but otherwise it kind of it's an oddity, an interesting one. I love the kind of some of the film and seeing those characters, some of those actors as those characters again. But it's just it's a nice part that should be recognized in Cameron's kind of filmography and kind of career, but it's not really a fully fledged project or film, but it's a cool thing to look at and kind of look back on as well. I just wish it was more preserved than it currently is. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.